Hello, I'm Jerry Scheidbach, pastor at Lighthouse Baptist Church in your brain masseur. Get ready for your brain massage. I've got my Bible open to Amos chapter number 7. There's something very interesting that develops in this chapter. The Lord pronounces a judgment against his people. Amos responds with a petition, saying, I beseech thee, Lord, by whom shall Jacob arise, for he is small? Or in other words, when Amos the prophet heard the judgment God pronounced, he said, oh my, we could never recover from that. And so when he prayed, God repented for this and said, it shall not be, saith the Lord. And then God presented a second judgment, and Amos responded in the same way. He said, oh Lord, if you do that, Jacob will be wiped out forever, and that'll be too much for us. And so God repented of that one, and then offered a third judgment. Now this third judgment is the one I want to look at real quick. In verse number 7, thus he showed me, and behold, the Lord stood upon a wall made by a plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand. And here what a plumb line is, that's a weight at the bottom of a string, and you hold it, and so gravity allows you to be able to center something with the plumb line. It allows you to build a wall straight, is the idea. And so God is standing on this wall that was made by a plumb line, and he's holding a plumb line in his hand. And he said, and the Lord said unto me, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, a plumb line. And he said, then said the Lord, behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people, Israel. I will not again pass by them anymore. And the high places of Isaac shall be desolate, and the sanctuaries of Israel shall be laid waste, and I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with a sword. Now the interesting thing there is, what God is saying is now he's going to limit and target his judgment very specifically. Whereas the first two judgments were general and came upon the entire land and upon all the people. But this third judgment, God focused it specifically on, well, we'll get to that in just a little bit, but Amos did not petition the Lord on that one. He felt like that's one we could endure, and on the other side of it, make a comeback. Keep that in mind as we look at some things going on in our country right now for your brain massage in this show. Now, think about the gopher situation. The gopher. What is a gopher? G-O-P-E-R, gopher. It's like a gopher. I liken it to a gopher. So a gopher is like a gopher, a Republican that feeds on the grassroots in America, the conservative grassroots. They feed on that to get elected, but in the process, they destroy the lawn, they destroy the grass when they betray those who elected them. So I refer to those sorts of Republicans as gopers. Look at the mess we're in. We've got Republicans declaring that they are going to vote for Hillary, and the reason is because they're so disgusted with Trump. Now, I've not made it any kind of a secret what I think about Trump. So that's not where I'm going here, but a very interesting point's going to be made here. Follow along. Now, I know you can say it's about their power base in the GOP being threatened by Trump's anti-establishment campaign. But you know, not too long ago, the Gopers were talking about voting for Trump. In fact, they were getting pretty insistent on it, that we need to get behind the nominee and go ahead and vote him in, that kind of stuff. So these Gopers were actually, at one point, beginning to not warm to Trump necessarily, but beginning to relent and give in to the idea that it was inevitable and that they were going to have to vote for Trump. But then the latest scandal broke out, and his vile conversation with that reporter, Mr. Bush, I forget his full name, and a flurry of trumpets come crawling out from under their rocks, making accusations that Trump groped them, and who knows how many of those were for real. I'm sure some of them were, and how many were bought by Hillary and or by Soros. By the way, you did get the news that one of the violence instigators at one of Trump's recent rallies was actually on Hillary's payroll. So they're not above doing that sort of thing. And of course, you know, stuff like bimbos and groping, right? Hey, and even rape, as far as that goes, that only matters to people like Hillary if it's a Republican what did it, you know? like erasing 7 minutes of tape recording. It's a very serious offense. When a Republican named Nixon did it, remember Watergate? Some of you are old enough to have remembered all that, like I do. Others of you have certainly heard about it. But deleting 33,000 emails from her server and then just saying something equivalent to oops, and that's just downright hilarious, isn't it? But the people who care about the right ways of the Lord, people like that, or maybe we should put it this way, people who care about traditional American values that were built up on the Judeo-Christian ethic that's founded upon the Word of God, the Bible, and so on. That crowd, they do care about these sorts of things. And Hillary knows that that's not the crowd voting for her. That's the crowd who's going to, well, at least many of them, if they vote at all, will vote for someone like Trump. But they certainly aren't going to vote for her. So she's not going to hurt her voting base with this kind of thing, even though her husband is the worst of all. But she knows what she's doing. It doth appear that the left does not care about those sorts of things anymore. There's a certain deafness that's developed in their spirit. They don't really care about that, again, unless they can use it to advantage politically. But these gopers are so insulted because Trump is crude, rude, and obscene. Thank you, Linda. And that they've decided, I can't vote for Trump. I'm going to have to vote for Hillary. I want you to think about this. You know, folks, I get it that there are what Rush would call the strategists out there who are plotting and planning and this sort of thing. But, you know, you cannot completely discount or dismiss the simple human factor here. The gopers have got their standards, man. Hey, I mean, they've got their limits of what they can take. They've got their principles that they stand by no matter what. Huh? Now, of course, these establishment gopers, well, they're not committed to the same principles that matter to us. I mean, you know, when it comes to pro-life, pro-marriage, things like that, they're not particularly committed to that. They think those things should be set aside, that we shouldn't be concerned about those things and make such a big deal out of them and limit our vote or let our vote be controlled by those sorts of concerns and those sorts of principles. Think about this. But hey, they do have some standards, by the way. They've got some concern about decorum. They have an image of gentlemanly behavior to uphold, after all. Many of them are simply so repulsed at Trump, they just can't take it and they can't vote for him. And of course, I have my reasons for not voting for Trump, but they aren't these. Relatively speaking, would you agree that Hillary's scandals, we're talking Benghazi, I mean, these are serious. Emailgate, pay to play. Do I need to go on and on here? I mean, it's like well known. Her scandals, by comparison to Trump's, shall we say, dumpster diving morality in terms of morals, is rather like comparing the proverbial camel to the gnat, is it not? Mind you, not that I regard groping, photo-opping his wife to be at that time in a near-naked pose on his plane, you know, and then knowingly falsely accusing his opponent of having, what was that, 7 mistresses, when he knew it was a lie. And here's the guy calling Ted lying Ted, and yet he's pulling this kind of stuff. He's disgusting. There's no question about that. But so I'm not saying that I would refer to that kind of behavior as a gnat. I'm talking about comparing here. By comparison, and I'm thinking about these gopers. Watch this. You know, we can argue about whether it makes any sense at all that these gopers would swallow the sweaty, smelly camel of Hillary while straining at what would be, by comparison, the gnat that is Trump. But you know that is human nature for you, isn't it? During the primaries, Trump stomped all over the sensibilities of so many people. I mean, he's got the party all splintered, broken up over, are you ready? Personal issues. Issues of concern on a personal level. That's interesting, isn't it? It's weird to me because these gopers who are so personally offended at Trump's crude, rude, and obscene behavior that they're going to abandon their own party and they're going to cross over and vote for the Democrat. Wow. Amazing. These are the same people who complain against us, who care so much about issues like abortion and marriage that we won't vote the way they want us to vote. Isn't that interesting? They accuse us of being all wrapped up in our personal issues, all hung up on our single issues or something like this. They talk like that. And crashing their party with our principles. And now, they're showing us just what hypocrites they really are. Oh, what a bunch of hypocrites. It's unbelievable. So, here they are, all hung up on their personal issues, on the things that matter to them, so much that they would refuse to vote for the nominee of their own party. You talk about stringing at gnats and swallowing camels. Now, to wrap this point, you want a simple way to look at how the GOP is in such a mess? Consider Meg Whitman, the California GOP's favorite for governor a while back. She's so pro-abortion, she wanted taxpayers to pay for it. Yeah, even though the party platform includes a plank that's totally pro-life. But they would promote a pro-choice candidate to run on the GOP ticket here in California, Meg Whitman. Yeah, well, Meg Whitman's voting for Hillary. Of course she is. I mean, she wants a woman in the office of president. I mean, it's time for a woman. That's Meg for you. So why does America seem to be deaf? There's a deafness overtaking America these days. You can bring out statements made by Hillary telling you exactly what she intends to do and showing that she is communist. Good night. And yet, it's like America's deaf to that. One of the signs of divine judgment is deafness, spiritual deafness. And here's another sign of divine judgment. Isaiah 3 verse 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women shall rule over them. And women rule over them. Now listen to this. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths. Did you catch that? They which lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths. Why does it matter who holds these offices of leadership in our country? Well, leaders have influence. Leaders cause the people to go into error and destroy the right ways and the right paths. I really do get it. This race, on the one side at least, is a referendum on the MSM establishment, the progressive establishment, the Gopher establishment. I get it. It's all about down with the establishment, anti-establishment. Okay, I get that. No doubt Trump tapped into that, and I think that does explain how he ended up with the nomination. It's like I've said so many times, anger-driven behavior does not lead to a good place. Making decisions motivated by anger and revenge and so on, that clouds your judgment. And I think it certainly is illustrated in this case before us. And I've said repeatedly Trump could not beat Hillary. I said it over and over and over again. During the primaries, I said it until I was blue in the face. That's funny. Given how many red faces angry at Trump have quite literally turned blue. Think about it. Anyway, since Trump won the primary, however, I have not been, and I am not one of those who hopes he loses out of spite, against those who supported him. Even though I do believe he was nominated contrary to biblical precept and principle. Nonetheless, I don't hope he loses in order to prove that I was right about the guy. So what is a Christian to do? How are we supposed to pray for this in this situation? We talked about that for about 2 minutes and I'm done. We are in judgment before God. And it's like I've said before, David is an example here. He was a leader of the people who did wrong, who led the people to err. The people came under judgment. And God sent a prophet to him to offer him 3 alternative judgments to pick from. Each of them evils that would come upon the land and upon the people. David said, I'm not going to choose, you choose. So David just said, God, you choose the lesser of the 3, in that case, evils. Now I'm fasting and praying that God will be merciful and that he will choose the lesser of evils that have been determined against us. I feel like Amos, and we started there. Let's end there. I feel like Amos the prophet, where God declared a judgment, and Amos basically said, oh Lord, if you do that, we're wiped out. We will never be able to recover from that one. And when I look at the 2 evils before us, and I look at Hillary, I don't know that we can recover from a Hillary presidency. I don't know if this nation could endure another 4 or perhaps even 8 years of really Obama-tics on steroids. I don't know that America could endure or could survive a Hillary presidency. I do believe we could survive a Trump presidency. I think that would be a judgment. There's no question about it. But it's one that we could survive. Now, does that mean I'm going to vote for Trump? Well, no. For biblical reasons and biblical principles and precepts. I've already talked to you about that. But I am praying this way, O Lord God, cease, I pray thee, by whom shall America arise? You see, I don't see any coming back from a Hillary presidency. So, here's how I pray. As I fast and pray for America coming into this election, I hope God will do for us what he did when Amos prayed, that the Lord would repent of the devastating judgment and lay the lesser of the evils upon us. Now, of course, I want a miracle where God just gets rid of all this. And so here's the judgment I'm praying for. We're going to have judgment. What judgment did Amos accept? Listen to this. God stood upon a wall made by a plumb line, a wall that was built according to the rules. And America is a nation that was raised up according to biblical principles and precepts and so on. And God has come to that wall, and he's got his plumb line. He's measuring that wall. And then God says this, I'm going to set a plumb line in the midst of my people, Israel. He's going to measure them. He's going to take account of them. And then he goes on to promise he's going to limit and focus his judgment upon, he said, the high places of Israel and the perverted sanctuaries of backslidden Israel. You know what that's talking about? He's talking about judgment begins in the house of God. God's going to judge and purge his own house. That's what he told Amos he was going to do. That would be the false churches, what we call new cart type things, and these churches that aren't really salt and light, but they've caved in and compromised with the world. They'll be judged. And then he'll target the evil house of Jeroboam. Now that's very interesting because the house of Jeroboam was the ruling house. It was like, say, the White House or the Capitol or Washington, D.C. It was like saying that. The political establishment in Israel that day, God said, I'm going to judge my house and then I'm going to judge the people's house. That's something for us to think about. Don't let anybody kid you about this race. It's not over. Hillary's not de facto the president, even though the MSM are trying to call it like that right now. Remember Dewey? Dewey ran against Truman, and all the news media said that Dewey won, but when the votes were done being counted, it turned out that Truman won. And so, we might have a Dewey moment here. Pray with me as I pray with Habakkuk and as Amos. Habakkuk said in chapter 3, verse 1 and 2, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet upon Shigionoth, O Lord, I have heard thy speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years make known in wrath, remember mercy. Well, that's how I'm praying. That's how I'm approaching this election. I hope you'll join me in prayer and fasting. If you want a little book that'll help you, a small book, short read, but an effective book to its purpose, it's called Kingdom Power by Prayer and Fasting. I'm the author of that book, and you can get it on our website, and I want you to have it, read it, heed it, pray and fast for America like you have never prayed before. God bless you.